Humans on the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're doing a discussion video talking about Animation Chronicle 2022. Historically, the Animation Chronicle sets are not really known for being the most competitive sets in history, but they tend to have some really cool cards that actually end up helping like actual more rogue strategies, and every once in a while we'll see some cards that actually can creep into some actual competitive, like top tier strategies. We're going to be going through a list of everything I think is relevant from this set, just so you know, starting from the lesser relevant stuff to the more relevant stuff, even on like the rogue level. And other than that, I guess just keep in mind that this is actually an OCG product. It's not a TCG one. So these cards, I would almost expect all of these cards to be imported in Battles of Legend later in the year. I think around October we'll get this. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but later, a couple months down the line. So keep that in mind. But other than that, like, it's a set all about importing anime cards. They're not expected to be the most insane things, but some of them do still end up being really interesting nonetheless. So let's just get into it. Starting off with the lesser cool stuff, but lesser relevant stuff competitively. Let's start with the G Golems, because I do think they're worth mentioning. I do think this little package is like interesting. The fact that Pebble Dog is just a one card link 2, and we know that a one card link 2, if they're cybers, means a one card access code, so you have to respect that. One card Heat Soul, right? So like they have some interesting cards. We'll talk about another card specifically from this archetype later on, but as far as the archetype as a whole, I just think we're at the point where between the new MathMech card making the MathMech engine crazy, the Code Talker engine is crazy, generic cards like Debug and Parallel Exceed already in the strategy for the main deck, I just feel like if these cards had come out in the beginning of the Link era, we might have been looking at something interesting. But because it's come out so far down the line past the Link era, it's just not as good as the rest of the stuff we have. But maybe they'll get more support and they'll work around it, but I don't know what else they would do, to be honest. But as far as this wave, it's just okay. Next up, we'll talk about Toolboxes, a pretty interesting generic card. It just says if you control a monster, it's continuous, by the way, so you can do this every turn. Reveal 2 equips from your deck. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to the hand, and the other one gets put on the bottom of the deck. It's technically just a +1, searches an equip spell. They do have to be different names, though, so that does get a little interesting. You have to be playing a deck that, one, has enough equip spells where this becomes cool, but also equip spells that you're kind of okay with. It's a win-win, you know what I mean? You need to play a deck that you can hit either of 2 options and it'll still work out for you. That makes me think of something like Infernoble. I know they play stuff like DDR and Living Fossil sometimes, so both extenders, so either one could actually help you out. They also have Durendal, which is just a straight-up like Rhoda card for them. Again, I don't know. It would take a pretty specific archetype, but if we get an archetype down the line with like really powerful equip spells, maybe a card like this could be really interesting. And the fact that it's every turn also is pretty cool. So it allows you to grind and get free equips every single turn. Next up, we have Dream Cicada. Nothing too crazy here. He just special summons himself if you control an attack position insect. And then if this card's normal or special summoned, you can target a monster on the field and change its battle position. That's actually not terrible. I mean, playing into a board, swapping something that may have maybe a weak defense but a high attack, and then you switch it and you can actually just have a much easier time running over it. That could be something funny, but it's just an extender. Obviously, the only archetype I'm really looking at this for is like Insector, the Insector like insect deck. They do always look for new good extenders. They have a decent amount already, so I don't know if this really power creeps into the deck, but it's still something worth noting. If a rank 3 variant or level 3s do become relevant, this card could be something to note. Next up, we have an equip spell. So we're talking about equip spells, just like from Toolbox, but this one is actually pretty cool. So this one says, activate by targeting any monster with 0 attack and grave, special summon it. That's it, pretty much. When this card leaves the field, you destroy the monster, but you don't even banish it. It's not negated, anything. So this card's actually a pretty good extender. Obviously, still specific to the deck. It has to be a monster with 0 attack, which is not in every deck, but I don't know, I think about stuff like Hauki Fibrax, and I think about stuff like Isolde, who like very easily could summon any, warrior monster or tuner straight from the deck. And if any of those are really good targets with 0 attack, this card, specifically with Isolde, because if you're playing it in for nobles, you'd have a way to get it back to hand. You're just getting an extender back to your hand, which is really sweet. So I think it's interesting. I don't know, it really depends, obviously. At the end of the day, the deck you're playing in, it's pretty specific, but I could see this coming up. The fact that it doesn't negate the monster, you know, and that the monster doesn't even get banished anyway. So if it floats when it hits the grave, like, we could be looking at something pretty interesting here. So felt like this one was definitely worth mentioning. Moving on, Dream Shark, water support card. Long story short, it says if you control no monsters or all monsters you control are water, jumps on the field. Level 5 extender. That's pretty sweet. We've been seeing more extenders like this that work either way. Whether you have something or whether you don't, jumps on the field really easily. So it's very flexible as an extender, even if you have no monsters on the field. It also can't be destroyed by battle once per turn. That actually could matter. He's 2600 defense, so he could wall up for you in simplified board states, and he has a way to like come back if you take effect damage to you, which is cool. So pretty cool card, mostly for sharks because they're really the main water deck off the top of my head that wants to make rank 5s. But outside of that, I could still see this being an extender in something like Atlantean Mermail so that they can take advantage of like the level 5 to make like specific synchro lines. I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking off the top of my head. It's a fish, not the most searchable of all time, of like the Aqua and Sea Serpent. Sea Serpent's the most searchable in that deck, but still pretty cool to mention, just a good generic water extender that could come up. Next up we have Senko, another really good generic extender. This one says if any earth monster is normal or special summoned, you can special summon this card from the hand. This works like Kagemuchi Knight. It would chain block something on summon, which is very, very good. Outside of that, you can also banish this card from your grave to target a level 5 or higher warrior you control and an opponent's attack position monster. Your monster loses 1500 attack, and if you do, you destroy the opponent's monster. That's pretty sweet, especially since Ice Sold itself is 1600. So you could... Oh, actually, it has to be level 5 or higher. So that's not as good, but like if you're playing Infernoble, right, you're looking at Charles. There are some other options as well, stuff like, I think about Goki. So like Infernoble doesn't make sense because he's an Earth, but Goki makes more sense because you normal summon any of the Gokis, he jumps on the board. If you have another Earth normal summon, this like chain blocks it. I don't know off the top of my head what else that would apply to, but I'm sure there are definite things. And then that pop effect is just icing on the cake, and he's 2400 too. So even going second, just plopping a 2400 beater on the field to go battle phase, clear something, and then main phase 2 try to make a sold and pop off. Actually seems pretty good. I like this card through and through. He's also a level 7. Again, level 3 tuner. Boom, into Baron de Fleur plays. There's definitely something. There definitely could be something here, is all I'm saying. So definitely a cool card. And Warriors already have so many tools. As long as it's Earth-based, this guy could be really good. Next up, we have G Golem Crystal Heart. Coming back to this card. This card is a cyber support card. Takes any 2 Cybers monsters, which is really cool. And this card's just really strong. It can target any Earth Link monster in grave and reborn it to a zone this points to. It also places a counter on it, on a monster, and then whatever. But there's literally no restrictions on this card. Doesn't lock you into anything. It's just a Cybers, and it makes me think of stuff like Transcode Talker. This card, on like a later turn for follow-up, this card goes Revive Transcode. Then the transcode revive another link 2 or 3, and right there, this card essentially could mean just making this, once you already have your graveyard kind of set up, is like 8 link materials, sometimes even more, because you could potentially go transcodes into Splash Mage into another monster, that monster could float when it's linked off, right, etc., right? It seems like it could be an insane follow-up card post turn 1 as a one-of in the deck, where all you have to do is make a link 2 with Cyberses, and you could just go crazy to get back into a duel. So really interesting card. I love that it has no restrictions aside from just needing Cybers materials, but yeah, really, really cool. I'd definitely be curious to take a look at this one in a couple other decks that I mess around with. All right, and then next we have Doodle Beast. This is 3 separate cards. You have Stego. This card is kind of the same extender that Dream Shark is. If you have normal monsters or all monsters are dinosaurs, jumps on the field. Then when it's special summoned, or normal summoned, you can add a Doodle Book spell or trap from deck to hand, then discard a card. That's really, really good because the trap in the that we got, actually its best effect is in grave, where you just banish it to add a level 5 or higher dino from deck to hand. Problem is you can't do that on the same turn it was sent, unfortunately. But the fortunate side of it is we did also get Tyranno. So Tyranno's the other really good part here because as a quick effect, so he can tribute himself by tributing, or he can beat tribute someone by using only 1 dino, even though he's a level 8. And during the main phase, he essentially quick effect tribute summons himself. And lastly, on normal summon, he can destroy any monster on the field, non-targeting. So this gives a really nice addition to dinosaurs as another way to like set up additional layers of interruption. I love that it sits in the hand, so that helps you play around certain things where you're not like have a bunch of stuff committed to the field to get kind of blown out with big side deck cards. Really, really cool. I like this card a lot. I like this card particularly a lot. The other two are nice support cards. If Stego was a level 4, this support would be insane for dinos. Like legit, this could be potentially good enough to make dinos like tier 1 again if this was level 4. I really believe that. Because you'd be able to make like Dolka super easily. You'd be able to like, off of like one card, make Dolka with the Tyranno in hand. So that's double monster negates and a pop off of just Oviraptor or Fossil Dig. Like it'd be insane. It'd be so powerful. But yeah, still really good. I still think these could find a way into dinosaur builds. I'd be very curious to what people come up with and the best ways to make use of them. But either way, they're super searchable. They're easy to get access to. You gotta like them, and their designs are so cool. Which brings us to the final card we're talking about today, Clockwork Knight, a machine support card, and it pretty much supports any machine deck. It's pretty cool. So this card has 3 main effects. It's kind of a floodgate plus a searcher. First, it makes all monsters on the field machines, which is particularly good versus certain matchups. We talk about stuff like Sword Soul. It seems like there's always a meta deck that kind of is like Sword Soul, is kind of like a type-based archetype. We've seen it in the past with like Salamangrates. We've seen it with, other stuff, but really, really nice making everything on the field machines. Then all monsters on the field you control gain, all machine monsters you control gain 500, and all monsters your opponent controls lose 500. That's actually really powerful. It seems like an understated effect because the battle phase is less important now than it used to be in the past, but that's actually really strong. That is a 1,000 point disparity between you and your opponent for all monsters on the field. That could be huge. That means 1,500 monsters you control are beating 2,500 monsters your opponent controls. That means 2,000 monsters are beating 3,000 monsters. Like, it really is a big, big deal. And it allows you to just, especially in decks like Trains, like we know machine decks are known for having big, beefy, like bunguses. This pushes that even further. And the final effect, this card says, if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and discard 1 card to add any Earth Machine from your deck to your hand. If you don't know, most machine decks are Earth Machine. A lot of archetypes, a lot of the best machine archetypes we've had are Earth Machine. And also now that we have Therian King Regulus, if you play a machine deck, that's a pretty powerful, just generic Earth Machine you might already be playing, even if you don't play an Earth Machine deck specifically, like archetype-wise. And he gives you insane value. Big Chungus with a negate on top of it. Very easy to search off this card. So it's a threat on the field. If your opponent gets rid of it without like getting rid of it to banish or back into the deck or anything, like it's just going to get you more resources anyway. And I think this card is great. Particularly, there's other interactions with like Cyber Dragon, where because everything becomes a machine, you can contact fuse your opponent's entire field no matter what if you stick this card with any Cyber Dragon because of Fortress, which is really powerful. And just almost any machine deck, you have to look at this card and be like, dang, this card's actually kind of good. Any given matchup, this card could be crazy in. Just because of that first effect, making everything machine on the field. So you have to respect this card. I think this is really cool. I'm excited to look at this in Earth Machine. I'm excited to look at this in Cyber Dragon as well. Even a Cyber Dragon control deck, this card looks crazy. But all in all, I'm really excited for it. I think it's really, really going to be something that comes up pretty regularly. But yeah, I think that's it. That's mostly everything I think that's like particularly interesting out of the Animation Chronicle set this year. Again, they're not normally known for being super competitive, but these are the things that I think are worth noting if you are a competitive player, just to keep an eye out. And obviously we'll know for sure when they're imported into the Battles of Legend when you can pick them up. But that's it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more discussion videos like this one down the line. And let me know your thoughts. Yeah, fill me in on what you're curious about with these new cards. Anything that particularly is striking your fancy, whether you play a deck that could use any of these cards and particular interactions for some of them that I didn't mention here, please let me know. I'd love to hear that down below. But I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace.